It's great to welcome to the program today Stephen Hassan, who is one of the leading authorities on cults and mind control. He's the founder of the Freedom of Mind Resource Center and also author of the book, The Cult of Trump. A leading cult expert explains how the president uses mind control. So first of all, it's great to have you on. I think maybe a good place to start is when we talk about mind control in the way you talk about Donald Trump using it. Last week we talked to someone who researched CIA mind control programs. That's not the same type of mind control that you're talking about, right?
So actually, in my book, I talk about MK Ultra and CIA mind control research when I'm doing a historical, like, how did we get to where we are here?
Yes.
And so it is very relevant also because the CIA in the early days of this research, I should say the research came about because of communist brainwashing, which the term was coined in the 50s. And military intelligence was sending people to say, what are the communists doing to get people to renounce their allegiances, to turn in their family members and friends? So people like Robert Lifton, Margaret Singer, Edgar Schein, Louis Jolyon West were the four big people who, when I was first deprogrammed from the Moonies, I read their material and met with them, and they said, holy mackerel, what you're describing in the Moonies is so much more sophisticated than what we studied in the 50s. And they were very encouraging me to learn more and share it with them.
Yeah, I mean,
So to
given
get
that,
back to
yeah,
your
go ahead.
question,
Yeah.
the MK Ultra, part of what they were studying along with LSD was hypnosis. And they do have a section in the book about hypnotic methods, indirect methods, and also the use of language to deliberately elicit powerful emotional states and vivid visual descriptions in people's minds. The use of repetition over and over and over again to enforce a black and white, all or nothing, good versus evil mindset. And in my book, I really try to cover the basic ground of making the case that Donald Trump acts like a stereotypical cult leader, has the malignant narcissistic characteristics, does the pathological lying, doesn't have the empathy, never takes responsibility. I go through all of the patterns, as well as, because people are saying, I have friends, I have relatives who are really smart. They're very educated, but they're totally into Trump. They're totally captivated and think, that he's the answer to God or the answer to all the life's problems. And that's exactly the mindset I had when I was in the moon cult in the 70s.
Yeah, I mean, given that experience, what do you see that it is that pulls people that seem very intelligent? They often seem more intelligent than Donald Trump himself. What is it that is happening? Is it message? Is it personality? Is it tactics? Or is it a combination of these
It's a
things?
combination of all of the above. So the first thing is that I want to state is that my work involves trafficking victims, people in political cults, therapy cults, religious cults, even cults of personality, where the person is really subjugated by another person, afraid to make them upset with them, that they may want to get revenge or harm them. So the point for me with destructive mind control is you can't have that applied in a negative way without the use of deception, because no intelligent, educated person would say, I want to be deceived, I want to be exploited and harmed. I want to have my critical analytic mind dismantled when it comes to how I behave. So it's a bi-directional process between the influencer and the influencee. However, in the United States, we're dealing with digital media. We're dealing with Breitbart News, Fox News, religious broadcasting network, the Trinity Broadcasting Network, and one universal that I see is that people who are only listening to one partisan viewpoint and getting all their information, that fits into one of the four components of mind control, which I call information control, especially if that information is propagandistic, doesn't care about what's factual and what's provable, and that appeals to emotions, particularly fear. And I talk about the universal mind control technique of phobia indoctrination, which in the mind of somebody under mind control, they can't imagine, criticizing the leader or leaving the group and being happy and fulfilled. They can only imagine a disastrous world with this deep state cabal that's filled with traffickers, that are going to destroy America as we know it, etc.
So that makes a lot of sense when it comes to some of the just general public followers of the president. I'm curious whether when you look at the way that a lot of the Republican Party at least claims to have fallen in line with Donald Trump, are they subject to the same sorts of influences, or are they just sort of playing a role because they've decided it's politically expedient and advantageous, and they're not really falling for it?
So that's a very good question. And the answer is I don't know. We'd have to kind of analyze person by person and involvement by involvement. But what I did learn when I was researching this book this year is that there are very powerful cultic groups that are influencing Donald Trump and I believe giving him instructions. It's these groups that actually have millions of followers that are his base, these are air quotes, that are his base, and that these folks are following their leadership who's saying we need to follow Trump. And the minute those leaders change their mind and decide that Donald isn't following God or isn't doing God's will on earth, they're gone.
What groups are those?
So in my book, I have to start with the obvious: Putin and the Russian influence is definitely influencing Donald Trump in my research, as well as all the Russian emigres around the world who are listening to Russia TV. They're also directly and indirectly implementing that. But then I get into a secretive cult called the Family or the Fellowship. The two best-selling books by Jeffrey Charlotte were written about this cult. It's been around in the United States for 80 years. It too was created in the Cold War era to fight godless communism, to create a group for Jesus. Except it's not the traditional understanding of Jesus. This is an appeal to elitists, people who are powerful, wealthy individuals, and they've been manipulating the United States government policy domestically as well as foreign for 80 years. There's a wonderful docu-series that Jeff Charlotte did for Netflix called Family that I would highly recommend. So Michael Pence was recruited into the Family by Chuck Colson, who was a convicted Watergate felon, and Pence was involved with bringing in the cabinet members. So this is a direct influence as well. Then I get into Opus Dei, which is a Catholic right-wing secretive cult that it appears Attorney General William Barr is involved with, and can help explain why he would not be representing honestly the Mueller report, the substance of the Mueller report, or his lecture at Notre Dame Law School recently about the need to get more Christianity into American members' minds, citizens' minds. Then I go into one of the scariest groups, and this is a conglomerate of organizations I call the New Apostolic Reformation, or I should say they call it that. These are groups where the leader says they're an apostle or a prophet who gets direct revelations from God. They typically speak in tongues, they cast out demons, they do faith healing, they stay up all night praying and fast for long days. And they're very high tech, and there's at least 10 million Americans. And when the media talks about Trump's base and calls them white evangelical Christians, in my opinion, I know white evangelical Christians, and they're aghast at what is being promulgated from the White House and their policies against immigration, for example. It's this cultic group that I'm very concerned about, because they've been told that Trump is a sinner, yes, but he's like a King Cyrus figure, and God is using him to advance the agenda of breaking down the separation of church and state in order to impose a more Christian, white Christian view on America. And then we get into alt-rights and we get into libertarians.
Sure, yeah, which we're more familiar with as sort of more well-known political groups. So
Right.
in the somewhat limited time we have left, you were deprogrammed.
Correct.
What is it that works to deprogram people from cult beliefs? Because what we do seem to know is that hammering them over the head with facts does not seem to work. Often appeals to values backfire if just
Right.
or sometimes fail altogether. What are the successful sort of characteristics of deprogramming?
Right. So first of all, I kind of flinch a little bit with the term deprogramming, because humans are not computers,
Sure.
but
Oh, I used it because you had used it.
that that's the term the media likes to use. I
Got
was
it.
actually deprogrammed in 1976 after a near fatal van crash. They took my crutches away, so I was being held against my will.
Mm.
And I've gone on to do voluntary interventions. But the key is, you're absolutely right. You can't say anything directly critical against the leader, the doctrine, or the group, because it triggers thought stopping, which is one of the mind control techniques.
Hmm.
It makes people defensive. It actually makes them feel persecuted and more deeply embedded. So the best thing to do is to create a warm relationship with the person. Say, I respect you, you're intelligent, you're educated. Help me understand how you came to have the beliefs that you have now. When did you first hear about Donald Trump? Did you watch The Apprentice? Were you a fan? Or did you ever hear of him before he started running for the GOP? And essentially, and this happened with me in the Moon Cult, is I was sure I wasn't brainwashed. I was 100% sure. But I was open to hearing about Chinese communist brainwashing techniques. So I was open to going through Lifton's 8 criteria. I've developed a model called the BITE model, which stands for behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotional control. You go through the components about this other group, not the one you're in, communism or traffickers. How do traffickers groom and indoctrinate people to be sex slaves or labor slaves? And then you tell them, look, the only way to really reality test is to actually talk to critics and former believers and really reflect over your own experience. Are you blocking automatically any critical thought against the leader, the doctrine, or the group, or not? And the truth is, in my experience, I've been doing this work for 43 years, is that nobody wants to be a fool. Nobody wants to be conned. And when they see, you know what, I believed what I believed based on what I was told, what my experiences was, but now I have more information, I can change my mind. And I'm not a bad person for changing my mind. I can go, yep, darn, Moon isn't the Messiah. I was brainwashed those 2.5 years.
Yeah, that's super interesting because it combines, number one, the starting from a point of empathy, which former white supremacists have described to me as extremely useful, with some of the techniques, honestly, that remind me of Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is lead people to believe they are deciding to change their mind, even if you are sort of in some way participating in opening the door for them to find that truth themselves. It's an interesting combination of tactics.
Yeah, it's not a Dale Carnegie technique. It really comes from my own experience.
Sure.
And it's genuine that I really do believe that people deep down inside want to know the truth. They
Absolutely.
don't want to be manipulated and lied to. They will respond to respect and love. And, convince me.
Yeah.
I
And
want.
there's also like an element of what this guy, Anthony Magnabosco, calls street epistemology, which is just having conversations with people about getting them to talk about how they came to believe the things they believe without necessarily challenging any particular belief head on.
Right. So the key in terms of my methodology, and I've written 3 other books before I wrote The Cult of Trump. The key is really educating people about what we know about the human mind and what we've learned about social psychology, how we, for example, are primed to follow our peers that we identify with, even if they're saying the wrong size line that we can see with our own eyes. 2/3 of everyone doing the Ash conformity study starts agreeing with the wrong answer, or people following who they think is a legitimate authority figure might start administering shocks to the point where they may electrocute another human being who's in
Yes.
the room, and they're hearing screams, "Help me, my heart," but they keep following the authority figure. It's understanding social psychology, that we're human beings, that our minds can be influenced, and also understanding that you're not a bad person if you've been programmed with bad beliefs.
We've been speaking with Stephen Hassan, who is one of the leading authorities on cults and mind control. Make sure to check out the book, The Cult of Trump. A leading cult expert explains how the president uses mind control. Stephen, such a pleasure having you on today.
Yeah, thanks so much, David.